All right. Rod, I'm in the Bay, but you are in Vegas where the 49ers and the Raiders put on one of the more exciting games of this NFL season. It was a back and forth. And, I was sitting with a bunch of Raider fans today, and I usually watch these games by myself, but Jarrett Stidham was giving the Raiders some hope there. And the 49ers were not, I don't know if they didn't game plan for him correctly, but there was a lot of opportunities for him to make plays, and he did. But before we get to that, how is Vegas, man? How is being in the craziest probably the craziest town to be in New Year's and New Year's Eve?
It was wild. Me and my brother, we went down, and my sister-in-law, we went down. We watched football all day yesterday, and around 9 o'clock after Ohio State broke my sister-in-law's heart, we decided we were going to go down and deal with the strip, and it was as wild as ever. it was it was red. It was a red out. There were 49er fans all over the place. So I was not surprised at all when it seemed like 3/4 of the crowd today was in red, because you could not escape Niner fans. They were everywhere. So it was a wild scene last night, and today's game did not disappoint. It was awesome.
Absolutely. So Shelvin, welcome to Shelvin. Thanks for joining in. Yeah, Bosa mentioned that they kind of maybe sort of overlooked Stidham. He was talking about some of the lanes that they left open, and I think he said Tom Brady could have run through them. So and the first point of this entire game is this was a Brock Purdy show us game. The defense had really carried, and he did his part, but the defense has really carried this team over the last several weeks. And he didn't have to do much. He just couldn't do the wrong things to give the takeaways, to stop the scoring. And everyone loved what he did, and I was happy what he did. But you and I are both kind of a little bit of like, he's playing well, but let's see. Like, there's still going to be teams out there who are going to figure out some things, and they're going to watch some of these games. And there were some points of this game where I was like, okay, like this is exactly what we were talking about. And also what I really wanted to see was him have some adversity and have to come from behind. And it was kind of frustrating that the Niners were losing this game, but I think in my mind, I was like, they're going to have to get through a game like this. But I think for a lot of Niner fans, they're like, Minnesota lost. Like, what are we doing? Why are we screwing around playing with our food here? And they did win out. But what did you think of Purdy's game here as far as being able to come back? Obviously, the defense was not there to bail them out today. The offense had to bail the defense out. And even going into the end of the game, we think we win the game, and Robbie Gould pushes one to the right. And so then Purdy's got to come back and go, oh, I got to come back and do this again. Gets a little lucky on, I think he was trying for the home run ball with Kittle on that flutter ball that Ayuk comes up with. But still showed the mettle, wasn't taking a bad sack when there were many opportunities for him to take bad sacks. And, you talk to Ayuk, I think I saw him quoted as saying, like, he's like the real deal.
Yeah, it was a tough game. It was a tough game for Brock. I mean, he missed several throws. He had several turnover worthy type throws that, went his way. But the Raiders were game. I mean, their defense isn't very good, and they were depleted, but yet they were game. They showed a lot. They did a real good job of handling our defensive line. We didn't get. I don't know if we got a sack. I think we got 3 or 4 quarterback hits, but we weren't able to control the game with the pass rush the way we normally do, and it created lanes and opportunities for them to be able to do their thing. And Devontae Adams and Darren Waller and Josh Jacobs are all really good football players.
Adams
And
is incredible.
he,
Jeez.
yeah,
But
he's
we know that. We've had to face him many times over the years.
yeah. And those guys made plays, and so and like you said, it was one of those situations where that we haven't had with this defense this season. But if you watch enough football, you know that you're going to have games like that where whichever um, facet of the team carries the team, um, the other has to carry them. And we found ourselves in that situation today where the offense had to bail out the defense. And, you know, I was pleased to see that we were able to answer the bell and do what we needed to do to pull out a victory here. I mean, we easily could have lost this game. I don't want to. I'm not gonna say it, but Brock did a really good job of of um, pulling us through, and getting us to the finish line. So that was another good showing by him.
He ends up 22 for 35. And there were moments in this game because the Raiders could not stop the run. The Niners averaged 6.3 yards per carry in this game, went for 170. And there were moments where I was like, man, they could just even in some of the hurry up spots, like why are we not running the ball? Let's run the ball. Let's run the ball. But Shanahan kept putting the ball in Purdy's hands, which I thought was really interesting. It was almost a Shanahan answering the same question, which is, we need Brock. We want to see Brock show us that he can take this team and drive this team and get his teammates, to believe in him. He had one throw that probably hurt them. There were a couple of other throws, like you mentioned, that were off target. A couple that could have been picked, but the one that I'm thinking of is he's got to throw across the field. He's got Kittle wide open, and he underthrows Kittle, which allows the interception to happen. And this is the criticism for Brock coming out of college, is he can't make certain throws that some of the bigger armed QBs can make. And I don't know if that was his arm was the detriment, or if he just underthrew the ball, because you see in the route, Kittle's kind of running a little bit of a post, and then Kittle has to react, and he's got to kind of come back for the ball a little bit. But that was the only turnover that he had, and it was he was going for it. So it's more of like a punt than it is anything else because of where the ball was. So it didn't hurt us in that way. But that's his only turnover. What did you think about that throw? Because if he hits that throw, game's probably a little bit of a different story, because the Niners offense is rolling a bit there.
I think you hit it on the head. I mean, as well as he's been playing, I mean, there are spots where you can see why he was 262. I mean, he does a lot of things well, but I mean, he's he's not Trey Lance when it comes to talent. I mean, and his arm is limited, and there are spots where you just would prefer him not to he does a very good job of playing to his strengths and not putting himself in situations where he's doing things that he can't do. He seems to be really self-aware and knows where his strengths lie and where his weaknesses lie. And I think that was just that was stretching the boundaries of his talent. Because like you say, that was a kill shot. And if he makes that throw, the ball game is probably over. But yeah, And what did you think about that last throw to Ayuk? I think he got away with one there that could have been disastrous.
Yeah, that there was it was pretty clear that it was another kill shot throw, right? They were trying to end the game by running a little bit of a. It was like he almost like ran like a quarterback counter or something.
Yeah.
And then he had Ayuk underneath and he had Kittle going over the top. They were essentially running a similar route, and Kittle was open, but right as he threw it, that's when the defense came in and he got hit, and the ball came out, and we were very, very lucky that Ayuk was right there to make that play. The defense, the one interception we had was a very similar one on Stidham, where I think his own Niner defensive line got a hand up, and Drake Jackson made a very, very athletic friggin' play to catch that ball. And then Stidham on the last interception to Gibson. I think Bosa pushed the offensive lineman right back into him, and it caused him to flutter one, and we got that one. So yeah, the defense on both sides left a lot to be desired, but there were certain plays where they made plays that it was literally like kind of luck as the reason why the 49ers came out on top in the end there, because both of those plays could have ended in different ways just by the ball just kind of fluttering up there. The one throw that I wanted to ask you about, and then we'll move off of Purdy and we'll talk about the rest of the team here. So Niners are 3rd and goal, I think, and they're running a play where there's a linebacker in the middle of Ayuk and Kittle. Kittle's coming across, and Purdy is dead staring at Ayuk, trying to get the linebacker to lean over to Ayuk's side because he wanted to come back to Kittle. The linebacker stays home, and then he tries to laser one into Kittle, and that ball could have been intercepted at the goal line. And that is a play where I was like, okay, I get it. I see what you're trying to do. But if he doesn't move, then you can't throw that ball. And he didn't move. And he kind of suckered Purdy into making that throw. And that was another one where we kind of got lucky at getting out of dodge there and not getting the interception.
That's one of the ones that I counted as a turnover worthy throw. That should have been a pick. I mean, like you say, you can't throw that ball. You can't. You just can't do it. So yeah, but again, he's a work in progress. He's not a complete. So that's something he should be able to learn from. But every week, I mean, he seems to get a little better. So yeah, I'm glad we got out of here because I didn't want to have to hear the Raider fans.
Look. Here's the thing: it was the Super Bowl for the Raiders because
exactly.
their playoff hopes are tied to so many different things happening correctly. They were 6-9 going into this game, and this is you could tell they pulled Derek Carr from the game, basically giving them a scapegoat a little bit for the team to kind of rally. Though I'm not sure it worked that way because Devontae Adams and Derek Carr are so tight. And Derek Carr was like, no, I'm not being the scapegoat here. Like, what are you guys doing? I'm not even showing up to this game. So that there was some early momentum, and then the Niners did the stupid onside kick to start the game, like just kind of goofing off a little bit. But there was some opportunity for the Raiders because they're at home. The Niners, there was more Niners fans so there were moments for them to kind of play up for it. And I think they did. And like I said, this was a very important game for them. And for the Niners, it was just sort of like, we just need to get to the end of this season. And I'm happy. I think we're very lucky to get a win out of this game. Shanahan early in the week said that, this was really the first week in which Brock was able to let the ball fly in practice again. And I started to wonder in the fourth quarter if he was kind of a little too hyped, because there were some short plays that he was lasering them in and guys were dropping. Kittle dropped one. I think another one Did one go through Ayuk? But there was a
Mm-hmm.
couple where it's like, you don't if he just puts a little bit more finesse into that ball, they're getting. But at the end of the day, it didn't hurt them because he would just come right back and make a good throw. So I think some of it may have been he's a little juiced. He's finally kind of feeling good, and he's letting that ball fly. And they can kind of pull back and go, okay, like on this pass, maybe you make it a little bit more catchable because George is not that far away from you. So ultimately, they come out of it without any, win is a win. And I'm sure while Shanahan probably doesn't like the result, he probably loves the idea that there's a lot of tape to watch and a lot of things to learn from to hammer these guys with the idea of like, hey, this thing is not over. Like we still got to get better.
Yeah.
Okay, had they lost, I think penalties and defensive miscues would have been the story of the game. I thought it was maybe Hufanga's second worst game of the season. I feel like that Kansas City game may have been the worst game, probably for the secondary, maybe for the whole team, actually. You saw Fred Warner get beat a few times, had a couple of defensive holding call. Trent Williams, when they were kind of backed into their own end zone, he had a false start and then a hold. And it was really just one of those things where it's like, they are just not as sharp. Now, you and I are grown enough to know that it was New Year's Eve in Las Vegas. Now, I'm not saying, if you have video evidence of some 49ers at the club, I don't want to see it, for one. But, for them to come out flat in this game was absolutely 100% not a surprise to me.
Not at all. Not at all. It just lined up that way. It just seemed to me that this was going to be a struggle. I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that it's just you just watch this game long enough, not this specific game, but football just in general, and you just see every week bad teams rising to the occasion versus. I mean, I don't want to say rivals. I got into that back and forth this week as to whether or not these dudes are rivals anymore. And like I like to say, the hammer and nail aren't rivals. So they're not. They're not. It's been such a long time since the Raiders have been good enough to be a rival of ours. But clearly they got up for this game and they played a really good football game. And we were fortunate to get out of there. And like you say, it was just all bad. The penalties, the miscues, we couldn't seem to get any pressure. It just was the like you say, the secondary. Hufanga, that's just I'm at a place where that's just who he is. He's gonna get caught um peaking,
Mm-hmm.
and his aggression, it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
There are going to be times when he's going to make a play, he's going to make a play because of his anticipation, and then there are going to be times when he gets fooled or lets his eyes get him in trouble by trying to anticipate what's going to happen. So you kind of have to take the good, because I would not want to, like we talked about earlier in the season with Dre. I would not want to rob him of that aggression, because it's such a big part of what's good about having him. So if it means that he's gonna get toasted every once in a while, I mean, obviously I wouldn't want that to happen, but if that is if that's the trade-off that we have to make, I'm willing to do that because he is he's a talented playmaker. So you kind of have to take the good with the bad.
I thought Stidham was really good. Like, if you're a Raiders fan, and I kind of was gauging the Derek Carr frustration, if fans kind of have his back or if they have the Raiders back, and they really are sort of blaming Carr for the reason why the Raiders aren't a winning team. But Stidham was tremendous, I thought. Like the way that he was able to create plays with his legs a little bit. Their pass blocking was awesome for most of the game.
Yeah.
Because I saw Bosa end up on the ground a couple times. Like, wow, they're putting my guy on the ground. Like they're doing something right here. And he was evasive. He had this really I think the best trait was his ability to wait until the very last second to let that ball go out and take a hit, knowing that he needed that little bit of time to get that receiver open. I think he did that very well a couple times, which extended some big plays. I mean, this dude, he threw for 365 yards. And even with two interceptions, he still ended up with 108 quarterback rating, which you don't generally see with interceptions. So he picked them apart. And again, this is going back to sort of the coaching thing. Like, you know, Ryan's has been the absolute dandy of the future head coaches, you know, the race for whoever's going to get jobs next year. And I would imagine he is going to get a great opportunity for one of the jobs. And so, you know, they're flying high and there's all these stats that they're sort of living on. And for and then the one that they repeated right at the end was, you know, no team has scored on the Niners in the last 2 minutes of the game. And so they're flying high. There's just so much praise, so much praise, so much praise. And the Raiders just kicked them right in the mouth. And even all the way until the end, you know, Gibson makes that interception and they finally get the takeaway that they needed and they win the game. But up until that point, Stidham was doing his thing, man. I was very impressed with him. And I kind of wonder what the Raiders do for quarterback, because they probably can have a few, you know, depending on how much they want to pay for someone like Jimmy G. You know, Jimmy G was definitely available. There's always going to be Rodgers and Brady and guys like that. But I don't know. Kind of wonder about Stidham. Did Belichick miss on another guy? What's going on here?
I don't know. It's clear that obviously they're moving on from Carr, and like you said, the Patriots quarterback, the former Patriots quarterback, are obvious connections. Brady and Garoppolo are obviously connected to McDaniel, and it just seems clear to me that that's what this is. Is that, you know, Carr wasn't his guy, and he wants to, you know, put his stamp on this offense. So that's what it's going to be. So I kind of doubt that, you know, they're going to go into the season with Stidham as QB1, but he did definitely help himself with this performance for sure. And I mean, I'm sure it's gonna be either Brady or Jimmy G that that end up down there. That's just the narrative is just too good for that to happen.
Stidham is probably a top backup though. Like I was kind of looking at where he ran roughshod of Belichick, because when Brady left, it seemed like he was going to have a chance, and then they brought in Cam, and so then he backed up Cam, and then I think he became the third stringer that year, even behind someone who we all know very well, Brian Hoyer.
Yeah.
And I look at Stidham, and I look at every game I've ever seen Brian Hoyer play in a 49er uniform, and I'm like, there's no comparison there. There's one guy who's clearly better than the other guy. So it's kind of weird how these guys, whether it's a confidence thing or didn't work hard enough in the offseason, thought it was his. Like I would love to know the background behind that, where guys just sort of, because there was no Brady to kind of, you know, because when Brady and Jimmy G were there, you know, Brady kind of saw Jimmy G as someone who could come in and snatch the job, and maybe Belichick was even planning that whole thing, right? So but Brady was gone when Stidham was there, so it's kind of interesting to see what I would love to know more of the story as to how
It's
he
kind of
fell out of
like
favor.
it's kind of like he missed his window. He got there with Cam, and then that whole thing goes sideways, and then they go get Mac, and then that's pretty much the end of it. At that point, well, one would have thought, and not having it seemed after his rookie year that Mac was on the ascent. Now I don't know. It seems just 1 year later, who knows what's going on there at quarterback and with the Patriots.
Okay, I wanted to look at because I saw the Patriots won today. They beat Miami, which was not necessarily surprising because I don't know what did the Niners do to the Dolphins, man.
They broke them. Oh my God, they broke them.
But I guess Mac was back to sort of being the guy. He had a pretty decent game today, and they beat the Dolphins. But I guess no Tua, so they were Teddy Bridgewater and Skylar Thompson today. So that's a big part of
Yeah,
that. Okay, so let's talk about uh, CMC and Ayuk. Terrific games from those guys. CMC was, I mean, he was awesome. And this is where I was saying how I kind of thought that they would run the ball a little bit more, but at the same time, we don't want to see him constantly having to get beat up between tackles. But he was just every time they needed a play, he was there. He was 19 of 121, so he was a 6.4 yards per carry himself with a touchdown, and he had set 6 catches for 72 yards. So he put on his Roger Craig 1989 impersonation, his Marshall Falk impersonation. I mean, he is sort of that echelon of player. Those are the two
absolutely.
names that I think of when I think of that type of thing. So tremendous, and I guess we can't. I guess we'll do our MVP here in a second, but if Ayuk wasn't as valuable, he was right there. He was 1B or 2A or whatever you want to call it. 9 for 101. Every big first down that they needed was Purdy to Ayuk, and there were some tight windows for some of these passes too, and so there was a lot of trust there. Ayuk, I don't know if I could see this on the telecast, but lots of people who cover the Niners pretty closely talk about his route running being so supreme. And man, just they have we talked about his chemistry with Jimmy earlier in the year. He's got it with Purdy as well.
Indeed. Um, I've seen several of the Facebook reel cut ups of Ayuk, and he really his route running really is superior. And like you say, I couldn't point to any one of his routes today that displayed that, but he really was. He was the first, like you say, he was the first down maker today. It was awesome to see between the two of them, and then to know that we've got Debo in our
Yeah.
back pocket and Kittle and Juice and third and Juwan. This is really a stacked offense. So yeah, this is you know, Brock is it's an embarrassment of riches for him, and all he's got to do is just make the right decision and just get it out there on time and let these dudes make plays.
So we had a video from last week's stream. Um and we were talking about if both guys are healthy, Jimmy G or Brock, who do you go with? Based on what we've seen. And as you can imagine, a lot of the commenters are like, how can you even think about taking out Brock? He's, playing so well. And I was commentating going, just, yeah, he is. But there's an experience factor that is going to be a big part of this, as we know from the NFL. But it's heavily Brock Purdy, he has definitely created a bit of a fan base. Whereas I think Jimmy had that, and then it kind of, at least for the 49er diehards, it kind of came down a little bit. But it is an interesting thing to think about. Again, now Shanahan is telling us that we'll be really lucky if Jimmy could play in the playoffs. Like he's really kind of like pouring water on that. But there were some moments where I was like, okay, there's a little bit of gunslinger in Purdy where I wish it was a little bit more conservative Jimmy. And then there was a couple moments where I was like, I'm so thankful Jimmy is not in this game because Purdy is taking shots that Jimmy would not even attempt to take. Where do you sit on this now after this next game?
I I've been pretty steady that I mean, if he's cleared, Jimmy's obviously a better option than Josh Johnson as a QB2. So that would be again another an upgrade again if healthy, if he could, be the QB2. But I at this point I don't see even after some of the struggles today, I'd be real hesitant to pull Brock. I just think you just kind of have to roll with him. And I mean, even if you in a playoff game, if you want to say if Jimmy's healthy and you want to have a quick hook for Brock, I don't even know about that because um I think just throwing Jimmy out there in a playoff scenario, coming off an injury is rough. It's even worse if you're going to do it, mid game. I mean,
Yeah.
I just
It'd have to be like an injury
right.
or he just throws like 4 picks in a row and the Niners are still in it. It had to be one of those things.
Yeah. Otherwise, I mean, I just think you got to rock with him. So, yeah, I I I think I think Brock is our guy.
All right, so there was a note in the press conference from Matt Mayoko. Kyle Shanahan said Aaron Brooks most likely had an MCL injury to his right knee. He was out of the game pretty early. Further evaluations will be done on Banks and Dre Greenlaw, who came out of the game. He kind of got bent backwards on a play where Fred Warner tried to add an and one to a tackle to determine what their status would be. So I would imagine that those guys are probably going to be rested next week, maybe even need to be rested based off of the injuries. The Niners, as we look at the postseason, the way that it's playing out, because Minnesota lost, the Niners are in the 2 spot. The Eagles lost. They are still in the 1 spot. They're only a game ahead of the Niners. Gardner Minshew is not making fans in Philadelphia. If the Eagles lose next week to the Giants and the Niners win, they could go all the way up to the 1 spot, with the one caveat being, though, the Giants don't really need the game. I don't think they can move out of their spot where they are. So they're sort of stuck. There may not be much motivation to play a lot of their guys. So they may just kind of take the gas off the pedal. So I think we're realistically looking at a 2 seed. However, if Minnesota wins next week and the Niners lose, the Niners slide back to the 3 seed. So it does seem like they really do need to play to win next week's game, because I think that 2 seed and having the home games there, even in if Philadelphia was to lose at any point in the playoffs before they face the Niners, they would be riding the home field advantage for the whole thing. So what is your outlook on that? Do you, for personally, as long as they're blocking correctly and the offensive line is playing well, I just think it's more opportunity to get Brock reps. That's what he needs. So for one, but Shanahan's even talking about playing Debo, and that kind of makes me a little nervous. And in a game that is not meaningless, there is meaning there, but if he was to then get dinged up again and miss some of the playoffs, that would be brutal. What do you think about next week against the Cardinals?
Well, number one, I thought 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, The game after Mexico City, I thought that the Cardinals were cooked. I thought, they were just playing out the string, but those dudes are out there playing. That Falcon game went all the way to like the final snap. So the thought of us just going in there kind of like this week thinking that the Cardinals are going to just show up and roll over, I think might be wishful thinking. So we might have to, we better be ready to play. That said, I would like to see Debo get out there. I would definitely have him on a pitch count. I wouldn't, I, whatever, a handful of touches or whatnot, just to as Shelvin says, to knock the rust off, as opposed to just rolling him out there week one of the playoffs. But yeah, I think it's definitely still an important game. I'm not. I know that the NFL being such as it is, it would not surprise me if well, no, the Vikings are in Chicago, so most likely that will be a 10 o'clock game. So will know by the time kickoff happens, because I doubt that game will get flexed in any way. So we'll know where we stand as it relates to the Vikings before we kick off next. Is it Sunday next
Sunday.
week?
It is Sunday.
Okay, yeah.
Sunday,
So
and yeah, there's no time yet. So
yeah,
they're figuring it out. The NFL is very smart about this. They're figuring it out for the TV. They want the best games to be in the TV slots.
right.
So they're we'll probably know, I'm sure, tomorrow when those game times are.
Yeah, 'cause I doubt that we'll get our West Coast game. I doubt it'd be like an early game.
Yeah.
Like 10. I can't remember the last time they did that where we were. The West Coast game was a 10 o'clock game, so we'll probably be firmly in the 1 o'clock slot. And like I say, with the Vikings being at the Bears, I guess they theoretically made that a late game too. So that we're playing at the same time. But the Bears, Justin Fields is awesome, but they stink.
Yeah,
So
he probably won't even play. I can't imagine that they want to risk much. Maybe he'll play and not that much, but
yeah,
worst thing in the world for them is for that dude to get hurt. So
yeah. I mean, at this point, for what? And I mean, they should be playing for that draft pick is what they should be doing,
yeah,
I think. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see when the schedule comes out. Are there any other? I guess beyond the Philadelphia game is of interest to us, I guess. And then that Viking game, I can't think of anything else, any others that really impact us. I mean, if we handle our business, assuming that we are able to win, um, those are the two that are the most important. I think for us, the Eagles and the Vikings.
yeah. Just quickly for the NFC, the playoff picture here. So Niners, Eagles, Vikings, Bucks, Cowboys, Giants have all clinched one of these 6 playoff spots. It's kind of crazy that the Bucks clinched their division with the 8-8
Crazy.
record. But in the hunt is still the Seahawks at 8-8, Lions at 8-8, Packers at 8-8. Is the tiebreaker that is the tiebreaker that if the Packers win, they're in? Is that how it works?
At this point, from what I saw, is that there's still permutations. They're like if they win next week, there's a 70% chance that they get in.
Oh,
So there's
wow.
still permutations where even with a win, they cannot make it.
That's
So
crazy.
yeah,
And so it'll be the Giants are locked in at the 6, and I think the Cowboys are locked in at the 5, and then the Eagles and the Niners and the Vikings can all sort of maneuver the between those spots. But I mean, Eagles just have to win, and they've got it locked up. So,
Yeah.
it's just so interesting because the on the other side, there's only 5 spots in the AFC locked in because the AFC South is still not decided. The Jaguars are in first at 8-8, and the Titans are 7-9, and they still have a chance to take the division from the Jaguars, which is
So it's winner.
incredible.
That game is winner take all next week.
Oh, they play each other. Okay, there you
Yeah.
go.
Mm-hmm.
That's what great scheduling,
Yeah.
NFL schedule makers. But yeah, these poor Dolphins, man. Like you said, the Niners broke them. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
They haven't won since they played us. That's crazy.
Okay, so let's look at the MVP of this game. I have I have a clear player of the game in CMC. I think Ayuk would have been my number 2, though. I just thought he came up so big for the game, for the team. He was like Brock Purdy's. Brock Purdy had two guys. It was CMC and Ayuk. Every opportunity, he was putting the ball in those guys' hands, and they're great chemistry for both of those guys. But yeah, that would be my guy, CMC.
Well, I flipped it. I went with those last couple of first downs put him over the top for me. So I went BA and CMC.
And Shelvin agreed with you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I did. And my honorable mention would have been Fred if it wasn't for those 2 penalties. He had a good game otherwise, but the 2 penalties took him out of the running for me.
Yeah, and even though Nick didn't get a sack, he still played a big part of it. That last interception was a big part of it. Was him. They were the Fox was definitely trying to figure out why he didn't have a sack yet. So they were like watching like the little holdings on him and stuff. And did you see the one play where Devontae Adams made that great catch that they were just trying to figure out if they could overturn it? And I didn't think that they could overturn it.
Mm-mm.
But that was Nick's opportunity to get the sack. He comes in right at the last second, and they originally threw a flag on him for roughing the passer.
No.
It must have been helmet to helmet or face mask to face mask or something, and then they picked it up. And I could just see Nick going like, what else do you want me to do?
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, it's going to be interesting. His snap count next week will be interesting. If we are able to control the. I mean, I thought. I had a feeling about this game, but I think we'll handle the Cardinals next week, and obviously he needs the 2 to catch Alden, and I think at this point, since he didn't get 1 or 2 this week, Strahan probably is out of the conversation at this point.
Yeah,
but
Strahan's on Fox just going like, come on, get that ball, Stidham, throw that ball, Stidham.
So Kyle and Nick have been very honest about the fact that it's something that's on his mind, that he would like to break the record, but Kyle has said all along he's going to be smart about it, and if once the game's out of hand or in either direction, that he'll shut him down. So we'll see. David Blau, I think, was the quarterback for the Cardinals today. Yeah.
How did they? I didn't even see what they did today.
They ended up losing to the Falcons. They were winning just about all game and then lost in the final 2 minutes. So again, I watched them last week. I forget who whoever they were playing. It was they were on Sunday night last week. And
Patriots, right? Wasn't the Patriots?
Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah. And I mean, they were game. They were still out there trying to win. So I fully expect them to, or I guess it could happen that they're in 1, 2, 3 Cancun mode for the last game of the season. But I fully expect them to show up and give us a game.
Is 1-2-3 Cancun credited to Nick Van Exel from the Lakers?
Yes. Yes.
That's awesome.
Yes.
All right, I did add to our graphic here for player of the game, CMC and Brandon Ayuk for the award here.
Awesome.
So before we get out of here, I heard a story. I don't even know what this podcast was, but I think Delanie Walker was on a podcast.
Yes.
And he was talking about Vern Davis and Mike Singletary. Did you see this?
I did.
Okay.
That was very, very interesting. Delanie, he had a lot of stories.
Okay, I only saw this one clip, and it relates to this podcast, which is named after our old Facebook page. And me and Facebook are just not on great terms right now, by the way. They do not want anything to do with me. But we I created a Facebook page years and years ago. I think we're talking 2008, and I just called it "We Want Winners" because that was the Mike Singletary thing, and the Niners were bad when I made it. I may have made it in 2010 actually, but the Niners were bad when I made it. So it was kind of like making fun of, the Singletary quote. And the page became really popular, and it was kind of going for a while. We turned it into a group, and then we turned it into this podcast. So anytime there's a story about that time frame, I'm always like paying attention because it's just a memorable time. And so Delanie Walker is talking about why Singletary and Vern had their pull apart. And then Singletary sent Vern to locker room. And Delanie said it was because Vern had dropped some balls and then finally caught someone and then like flicked the ball at the guy or something that he caught it against. And Mike was like, "You're not good enough to be doing that stuff." And so then they got in the argument, and then he sent Vern to locker room. And then he said that Singletary came back to practice the next day and had a rap, wrote a rap and performed a rap in front of the team, which had a lot to do with his speech from the day before about how they're not team players and they're not trying to win for each other and all this stuff. Mike Singletary was a part of the 86 Bears team where they did do the Super Bowl shuffle. So maybe he does have some MC experience. But I'd never heard this story before.
That was the first time I had heard about the rap. I had heard it wasn't the first time that I had heard that some players felt that it was, Delanie isn't the only player to feel that singled him out wrongly. That it was more of a stunt than it was anything legitimately that Vernon had done. And I mean, I guess I could see that he was trying to make an example of Vernon and trying to set a tone, I guess. And then the rap song kind of speaks to the fact that there was some shenanigans going on. So yeah, that was a very interesting time. And the more that we go on and the older I get, I kind of felt like Coach Singh got a bad rap, but clearly he wasn't very good at his job.
I just remember I was my next door neighbor who, other than my dad, he was the person who I would talk most about football with. And he's a Cowboys fan, so where the beginning and end of our conversations would start, especially in the early 90s.
Oh yeah.
But he had told me, he's like, Singletary was a great player, but Singletary doesn't know how to scheme for a lot of the things that these players need to do to improve. So thus he just comes off a little bit as like a motivational speaker kind of coach. And when you're a bad team, that can only take you so far. And so I was always trying to think of like, gosh, Mike Singletary played, linebacker, one of the greatest defenses of all time. Like, why does he not know a lot of the X's and O's that some of these other coaches who weren't great football players understand? So I always thought that was sort of an interesting storyline with him. as far as just, maybe, because we look at Kyle, and Kyle knows the offense side and the defensive side, you know, just so
Hmm.
thoroughly from an X's and O's standpoint. But one of the greatest linebackers in history of the NFL doesn't. That's the part that I never
Yeah.
understood.
Yeah, and clearly he was. I would push back. I mean, I according to Patrick Willis and Bart Scott and Ray Lewis, he is a great linebacker coach, which stands to reason. But clearly, he didn't. His expertise did not go beyond the linebacker position. So that like you say is very interesting as to why some coaches are able to do that and others aren't. Like you've seen some coaches go who are defensive players who go and coach on the offensive side um, because they know it.
Mm-hmm.
You've heard that a lot with like with African American coaches that um, the fast track to a head coaching job is offense. So like some people play coaches like Carl Durrell were like, okay, I'll go coach, I'll go coach offense. Raheem Morris did the same thing. Okay, I'll go coach receivers
Mm-hmm.
if that's going to get me a job faster. But like you say, it didn't seem like Coach Singh was of that mindset that he
Mm-hmm.
was going to do whatever it took to. But that was we were bad, but that was a very very fascinating time in our history. There was a lot going on there.
I mean, you could say he put the team on a platter for Harbaugh, right?
I
Like that's
mean, it's true. I mean, that team basically Harbaugh came in, put his arm around Alex, and and that was Coach Singh's team,
yeah.
and the only difference was, somebody came in and loved on Alex and made him feel like, he could play, and it worked for a
And I think
time.
there was a offensive coordinator shift and mentality because
That's true.
Jimmy Ray wanted to play a certain style of football that maybe didn't really work in the year 2009 or whenever they were there. And
Well,
Hart,
I mean, and I would even push back on that because Jimmy Ray has said or said during that time that was, you know, that was a Coach Singh creation. It was
there you go.
there was a philosophy that he wanted um to see, and whether it was him and then Mike Johnson after
Yeah.
Jimmy Ray, that there was a philosophy that Coach Singh wanted to follow that these offensive guys, you know, did maybe they didn't want to follow, but when your boss tells you to do X, you kind of are stuck and have to do X. And yeah, it was. I know Alex kind of threw everybody under the under the bus there towards the end of the Coach Singh reign, and that was a it was a very interesting time, and like you say, but those those teams were the building blocks for those Harbaugh teams. There's no question about that.
I mean, and let's bring this full circle. Uh, David Carr, not Derek Carr. Derek Carr's big bro. Remember when David Carr comes in for Alex on that one game,
Uh,
and the fans are just out. They're out on Alex. They're just completely done with this guy. And David Carr comes in, and you realize like, this and that. It's not really better, but
we were out on Alex like several times. It was crazy that like I say, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I got emotional during that Saints game because for him
yep.
to be, I watched every snap Alex Smith played for the 49ers,
Oh
and to
yeah,
see where he came from in 2005, to see him go around the end and score that touchdown, I mean, that's some goosebump stuff, boy. That was awesome.
yeah, absolutely. All right, so we're done here. We'll be back next week. we're assuming that the 49ers and Cardinals will be at 1, and we'll come on soon thereafter that game to sort of end the regular season and the 18 shows that we did of this show. I need to count them out. I'm going to count them out. We're going to start counting. I do that on the Death Lineup and on Thompson and Clark, but I didn't do it here. But I'll start counting the shows, and we'll have a nice little number. But yeah, we'll be back, and they're in the playoffs, so we're going to be coming back at least once more after one of these games.
The question is, are we going to be? Is there going to be a bye week?
That's
that would the week after. Wouldn't that be awesome if somehow we could get that number 1 seed? I don't guess it matters, but that would be nice to secure home field throughout and a bye week. I think that would be awesome.
Absolutely. All right. Shelvin said Happy New Year. Happy New Year, Shelvin.
Happy New Year, Shelvin.
Happy New Year, Rod. You still how much longer are you hanging out in Vegas?
I'm back Tuesday.
Okay. There you go. Good time, good stay. And like I said, we'll be back next week. For the rest of BSPN, Thompson and Clark will be back on Tuesday as well. Brad and I will be talking about this Carlos Correa craziness that is still going on
anywhere.
No, he is not.
Wow.
And then on Thursday, Brian and I will be back on the Death Lineup. We're going to the game on Wednesday night, so we'll have some firsthand analysis of the Warriors. But
is that Detroit?
That's Detroit.
Awesome.
When I bought the tickets when Steph was not injured, so I'm sure I paid probably about $50 to $100 more per ticket than what they're going for right now.
Hopefully Wiggs will be back.
Yeah, he's not going to be back Monday, which is kind of frustrating because I think they thought he was going to be back. And also Kuminga and Wiseman are out Monday, so they're going to be running like 9 guys out there for the whole game. But yeah, when Steph comes back, it'll all make sense as long as everyone else is still healthy. But we're just gonna have to piece it together until Steph comes back. If you are listening to this on the podcast player, if you can throw us a 5-star Apple review, a Spotify review, Google podcast, whatever you listen to, that would be awesome. It just helps us get more placement on stuff when people are searching. And if you're watching this on YouTube and haven't subscribed to that YouTube button, do so. We're getting some good views on some of these YouTube videos, so it's been a lot of fun to put together. All right. We'll be back next week. For Rod, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.